Her siblings kicked her out of the house. After Mom died, not knowing Mom left her the entire estate, Iya stood at the gate of her family house, soaked from head to toe as heavy rain poured down on her. Her hands were shaking as she held a small rusty key, her only connection to the home she grew up in. Her clothes were wet, her school bag heavy on her back, and her heart was broken. She had just returned from school, rushing home after hearing the heartbreaking news. Her mother, Mama Ebeli, had died suddenly after a short illness. Iya's face was full of tears. Her eyes were red, and her chest hurt from crying the whole way back. She expected hugs. She expected comfort. She expected to fall into her siblings' arms and cry together. But instead, as she knocked and called out, the door didn't open with love. It slammed open with anger. Sefu, her older brother, stood there with cold eyes. Halima, her older sister, peeked from behind him with a smirk. Before Iya could say a word, Sefu pointed at her and said, "You left. You ran off to school. You didn't care for Mama when she was sick. This house is not yours anymore." Iya's mouth dropped open. She couldn't believe it. Her hands trembled harder as she tried to explain, but they weren't listening. Halima added with a shrug, "You left us to suffer while you enjoyed your books. Don't think you can come back now and act like you belong." Then, without warning, they shut the door in her face. The rusty key in Aya's hand, once the key to her mother's heart, to her childhood, to safety, no longer worked. It couldn't open the door. It couldn't open their hearts. She stood there in the rain, confused, cold, and completely heartbroken. Her mind couldn't understand how love had turned into hate so quickly. Just days ago, she had spoken to her mother on the phone. Mama Ebeli told her how proud she was of her and asked her to stay focused in school. Now she was gone, and the only people she had left had pushed her out like a stranger. Iya didn't know where to go. Her shoes were filled with muddy water, and the weight of her mother's death mixed with the shock of rejection made her knees weak. Still, she stood tall, blinking back fresh tears. She wasn't ready to fight. She didn't have the strength, but deep inside, something told her this was not the end of her story. One day, they would regret what they had just done. One day, the same door that was closed on her would open wide again. But this time, she wouldn't be the one begging to enter. Aya was always the quiet one in the family. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She stayed calm and listened more than she spoke. Her siblings, Sefu and Halima, always saw her as the little girl who buried her head in books. They laughed at her, saying, "You don't know what real life is. You only know school stuff." To them, Aya was just a bookworm who stayed far away and didn't help with the family. But they were wrong. They didn't know the truth. While they were busy chasing fame, gossiping in the village, or showing off in fancy clothes, Iya was doing something else. She was building a deep bond with Mama Ebele. Every holiday, when Iya came home from school, she spent her nights talking with her mother. They would sit in the small kitchen, sipping warm tea, while Mama shared stories about her life, stories she never told Sefu or Halima. Sometimes, Mama would bring out her old diaries and let Iya read them. Inside those pages were Mama's dreams, her regrets, her secret wishes. Iya read every word with care. She asked questions. She listened with her heart. She saw her mother not just as a parent, but as a full human being with pain, joy, and fears. Mama Ebeli saw this too. She knew Iya understood her in a way no one else did. Iya didn't want money or land. She didn't want to be seen as the most important child. She just wanted time with Mama, and Mama gave it to her. Iya noticed the little things, like how Mama would rub her back when she was tired, or the way she always folded the corners of important papers. She saw how Mama looked sad when Seifu shouted at her, or how Halima only came around when she needed something. Iya said nothing, but she remembered everything. Her siblings didn't see these things. They were too busy thinking they deserved everything because they stayed at home. But being close in distance doesn't mean being close in heart. Mama Ebele knew that. That's why, in her final weeks, she spoke to Aya quietly over the phone, asking her to keep being strong, to remember what mattered. So while Sefu and Halima thought Iya knew nothing, she actually knew more than anyone else. Not just about school, but about their mother, their family, and what love really looked like. She knew Mama's favourite songs, her favourite prayers, and even where she hid her most important documents. Iya was silent, yes. But silence doesn't mean weakness. It means power with patience. And deep down, Iya knew a time would come when her silence would speak louder than any words. And when that day came, the whole family would hear it. Seifu stood in the middle of the living room, chest puffed out like a king. "I'm the oldest now. I'm the head of this house," he said loudly, looking at Halima for support. She nodded without saying much. Seifu loved power, and now that Mama Ebele was gone, he saw the house as his to control. He didn't waste time. That same day, he went into Mama's room and took out all her jewelry, gold earrings, beaded necklaces, even her wedding ring. He packed them in a bag and said, "I'll sell these tomorrow. We need money." Nobody stopped him. Next, he turned to Aya's room. "Clear everything out," he told Halima. "Sell her books. Toss her mattress. She's not coming back here." He sounded cold, like Iya was a stranger. He didn't even say her name. He just acted like she had disappeared forever. Halima followed his lead. She pulled down the curtain, boxed up the few clothes Aya had left behind, and threw away her notebooks. Seifu went further. He took Aya's childhood photographs and burned them in the backyard. One by one, the pictures turned to ash. Her first day at school, her birthday smile beside Mama, all gone. They erased her from the house like she never mattered, like she was never part of the family. No one cried for her. No one missed her. They acted like she had no right to anything. Seifu laughed with some friends, saying he would rent out the house to rich travelers from the city. "We'll make real money now," he boasted. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that Mama Ebele had done something very important just 2 days before she died. 48 hours before her last breath, Mama had gone to the village notary with shaky hands and a firm voice. She wore her best ankara cloth and took a sealed envelope. In that envelope was her final wish, her truth, her heart, and her decision about who truly deserved everything she had worked for. She didn't tell Seifu, she didn't tell Halima, but she left instructions that the envelope should be opened 1 month after her burial, in front of all her children. That letter was her voice beyond the grave, her way of speaking when she could no longer be heard. So while Seifu and Halima celebrated, believing they had won, they didn't know a storm was coming. A truth so strong, it would shake the very walls they thought they owned. And in that truth, the girl they threw away would rise again, with power, proof, and peace Mama had left just for her. In a quiet, dusty room at the back of the village notary's office, something very important sat on a wooden shelf. It was an envelope, carefully wrapped in Mama Ebele's favourite ankara cloth, the bright yellow one with red flowers she always wore on special days. No one touched it. The notary, an old man with grey hair and kind eyes, had kept it safe ever since Mama brought it in. On the outside of the envelope, Mama had written in bold, shaky letters, "To be opened 1 month after my burial, only in the presence of all my children." It was clear. No one could open it early. No one could read it alone. It had to wait until the right day and the right moment. Mama had come to the notary just 2 days before she passed away. She looked weak but determined. She had said, "This must be opened after I'm gone in front of Iya, Seifu and Halima. Promise me." The notary nodded and sealed the envelope with wax and a stamp. He didn't ask questions. He could see in her eyes that it was serious. For 1 whole month, the envelope waited in silence, while outside, things were not quiet at all. Seifu was busy selling Mama's things. Halima was decorating the house and talking about renting rooms. And Iya, she stayed with Baba Cole, working quietly and writing in her journal each night. She didn't say much, but she knew the letter was waiting. When the 30 days passed, the notary sent out messages. "Come to the office. It's time to open Mama Ebele's last letter." At first, Seifu and Halima didn't want to go. "What's the point?" Seifu said. "We already live in the house." But the village elders insisted. "It was her final wish," they said. "You must honor it." So they came, a little annoyed, a little curious. Iya came too, quietly and on time. All 3 children sat in front of the notary as he brought out the envelope, still wrapped in that beautiful Ankara cloth. He opened it slowly, carefully, like opening a treasure box. Inside the envelope was not just one thing, but many: a handwritten will, a personal letter from Mama, and a confession. The room became very still. Even Seifu stopped tapping his foot. The notary began to read. Mama's voice filled the room, not with sound, but with words from her heart. What she had written would soon change everything: the house, the power, the truth. A secret was about to come out, a truth that would break their family apart before it brought them back together. And Iya, the one they tried to erase, was at the center of it all. Iya had no home to return to, but she was not broken. After her siblings kicked her out, she walked through the village streets alone, holding only a small bag with her books and clothes. The sky was dark, and people whispered when they saw her pass. But she didn't cry. She just kept walking, hoping someone would remember her heart, not her situation. She found herself at the house of Baba Cole, her old teacher from primary school. He was sitting on his wooden chair, reading under the tree when he saw her. His eyes widened with surprise, but then softened with concern. "Iya, what are you doing here, child?" he asked gently. She lowered her head. "Mama is gone, and my siblings said I don't belong in the house anymore." Without another word, Baba Cole stood up and opened his gate. "You will stay here," he said firmly. "It's not much, but it's yours." He showed her a small space in the corner of his shed. It had a mat, an old blanket, and a window that let in sunlight during the day. It wasn't home, but it was safe. The next morning, Iya woke early and went to the nearby school. She asked the headmistress if she could help with cleaning or tutoring. The headmistress, remembering how smart and respectful Iya had always been, allowed her to assist the teachers. In return, they gave her food and water. While her siblings wore gold and loud clothes to Mama's memorial, Iya arrived in a simple dress. She stood quietly at the back, watching. Her siblings didn't greet her. They looked at her like she didn't exist. But the villagers noticed her presence. Some whispered, "That's the real daughter Mama loved," while others shook their heads at Seifu and Halima's pride. Every night, after working and helping at the school, Iya would sit on the floor of her little shed and write in her journal. She wrote about her memories with Mama, the pain she felt, and her hope for the future. She didn't plan revenge. She didn't curse her siblings. She waited, knowing something they didn't. The letter in the notary's office would soon speak. Even when she had nothing, Iya still gave respect. Even when she was ignored, she still stood with calm strength. She was homeless, yes, but not hopeless. Her heart still held warmth. Her mind still carried dreams. And deep inside, she believed that truth always finds its way. All she had to do was wait for the right moment, and she would rise. Exactly 30 days after Mama Ebeli's burial, the village bell rang loudly that morning. People knew it meant something important. The village chief had called a meeting at the town hall. Only Mama's children were invited. The notary had come from the city, holding a brown envelope tightly in his hand. It was time to open Mama's last letter, the one wrapped in her favorite Ankara cloth. Sifu and Halima arrived first, both dressed in bright clothes and walking like they owned the village. Sefu laughed and said, "This is just a waste of time. We already know what Mama left behind." Halima nodded, holding her fancy bag and chewing gum loudly. They didn't even glance at Iya when she quietly walked in, wearing a simple blue dress and holding a small notebook. Everyone sat down. The air was heavy, and even the birds outside seemed quiet. The notary opened the envelope carefully. He pulled out the letter and cleared his throat. Then, in a calm voice, he began, "I, Ebele Adesua, being of sound mind, write this as my final will." Sefu rolled his eyes, but Iya's eyes stayed fixed on the notary. She was holding her breath. The letter continued, "I want to thank my children, but I must speak the truth. Not all children are the same. Some love for show, others love with silence." The notary paused and looked at the three of them. The letter went on, "I leave my house, my land, and all my savings to my youngest daughter, Iya." The room froze. Halima gasped. "What?" Seifu stood up. "This is a joke, right?" But the notary showed the signature, the seal, and the two elder witnesses who nodded slowly. The documents were real, legal, final. Mama had written clearly, "Only Iya saw me, not what I owned. She listened to me when I cried at night. She cared when I was weak. She never asked for anything, yet gave me everything. Her time, her heart, her respect." Iya didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and whispered softly, "Thank you, Mama." Seifu stormed out, shouting that he would challenge it in court. Halima looked down, silent for the first time. The villagers murmured. They remembered how Iya had cared for Mama when no one was watching. The meeting ended quietly. Iya walked out with nothing in her hand, but everything in her heart. Her mother had spoken, not with anger, but with truth. and truth always finds its voice, even after death. The room was still full of shock. After the notary finished reading Mama Ebele's will, Sefu stood up with fire in his eyes. He shouted, "This must be fake! There's no way Mama would give everything to Iya! She didn't even live here!" His voice echoed through the hall, but no one moved. The notary calmly laid the papers on the table and said, "These are legal, signed and stamped in front of 2 elders and Mama's best friend. This is her final word." The village elders nodded slowly. Mama's closest friend, Mama Titi, stepped forward with tears in her eyes. "I was there," she said. "Your mother asked for peace in her last moments. She said only one child truly saw her pain. That child was Iya." Halima sat down quietly, confused and ashamed. She looked at Iya, who hadn't said a word since the will was read. Everyone stared at her, waiting to see what she would do. Would she cry? Would she shout back? Would she laugh at her siblings for losing everything? But Iya stood up gently. Her voice was soft but strong. "I will not beg to enter what was already mine," she said. Her words were calm, but they held great power. She looked at Seifu, then Halima. "I'm not here to fight you. I'm not here to make you suffer. I will return tomorrow, not with bitterness, but with builders and teachers." People looked at her, surprised. What did she mean? "I want to fix the house," she explained. "I want to turn it into something Mama would be proud of. A place where girls can learn. A place where women can grow. Mama gave me the house, but I want to give it back to the village." Her voice was filled with purpose, not pride. She didn't want revenge. She didn't want power. She wanted to build something better out of the pain. Seifu scoffed and walked out angrily, pushing a chair aside, but no one followed him. The village people began to murmur, and many nodded with respect toward Iya. They could see she was not just the quiet girl anymore. She was someone with vision, someone who carried her mother's heart. Iya walked out of the hall slowly. The sun was setting, and a warm breeze touched her face. She didn't have gold or fine clothes like her sibling, but she had something they lost long ago: dignity. And with that, Iya began to walk home, not to fight for a house, but to build a future. Iya stood at the front of the old house, now painted fresh and bright, with flowers blooming at the gate. The broken windows were fixed. The roof no longer leaked. Inside, laughter and soft music filled the air. It was no longer just Mama Ebele's house. It had become something bigger, a place of hope. She didn't chase her siblings away like many had expected. Instead, she told them, "You can stay if you help build something better, but if your hearts are still full of greed, you won't feel at home here." Seifu didn't say a word. The shame was too heavy for him. He quietly packed his things one night and disappeared from the village. No one knew where he went. Halima, however, stayed. One afternoon, Halima walked through the new library, inside the house. Her eyes stopped at a large portrait of Mama Ebele, smiling in her old wrapper. The picture was hung above a shelf, filled with books for girls, books about courage, healing, and strength. Tears rolled down Halima's cheeks. She touched the photo gently and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mama. I didn't understand." Iya had turned every room into something meaningful. The kitchen became a space where widows cooked and sold food to support themselves. The living room turned into a classroom where young girls read and learned to write. The backyard grew fresh vegetables for the community. Villagers who once saw Iya as the forgotten daughter now greeted her with deep respect. They came to her for advice. They brought their children to the center. On the building's entrance, in gold-painted letters, were the words, "Mama Ebele, Women's Home of Wisdom." Iya didn't want applause. She didn't need awards. Her joy came from the little things. Seeing a young girl read her first book, watching a widow smile while baking bread, hearing laughter in the same house where she once stood in the rain, locked out. One day, an old woman from the village came to her and said, "Your mother would be so proud. You've done what even 100 rich men couldn't do. You gave this place a heart." Aya smiled softly. "Mama taught me in silence," she replied. "I just listened." Now, every corner of the house told a story, not of pain, but of healing, not of fighting, but of growing. The house that once rejected her now stood tall in her name, not just as a building, but as a legacy. Aya didn't just come home, she brought the whole village with her. When people asked Aya why she didn't push her siblings away like they did to her, she would smile gently and say, "Mama never taught me to be like that." Those words carried a deep meaning. Even though Seifu and Halima had hurt her deeply, she chose a different path. She did not want to hold on to anger or hate, because she knew that would only make her heart heavy. Instead, Aya built a place where wounds could heal. The house wasn't just bricks and walls anymore. It was a home filled with kindness and hope. She invited her sister Halima back and gave her a special role teaching sewing to young women in the community. Halima was surprised at first, but she accepted the chance to make things right and help others learn a skill that could support their families. Sifu was a different story. After he left the village, ashamed and broke, he came back months later, quiet and full of regret. He had lost everything because of his pride and harsh ways. Iya didn't turn him away. Instead, she gave him a job helping with repairs around the community center. It wasn't easy for Sefu to accept help from the sister he had pushed out in the rain, but over time, he started to change. Aya understood that forgiving didn't mean forgetting all the pain they caused her. She never pretended it didn't hurt, but she also knew forgiveness was not about others. It was about freeing herself from the chains of bitterness. Holding on to anger would only trap her in the past. Forgiving gave her peace and allowed her to move forward. People in the village watched Iya closely. They saw a woman who was strong but gentle, who could stand tall without pushing others down. Many said her heart was bigger than the pain she had lived through. Aya believed that true strength came from love, even when it was hardest to give. One day, a young girl asked Iya, "Why did you forgive them after everything they did?" Aya looked at her kindly and said, "Because I choose freedom over hate, and Mama showed me the way." Iya's story spread beyond the village. People everywhere wanted to learn from her example, that sometimes mercy is the greatest power. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you free. Through her forgiveness, Aya showed that even when people hurt us, we can choose to heal. She taught that mercy doesn't mean you forget what happened, but that you refuse to let pain control your life. In the end, Iya's heart was not broken. It was open. Open enough to welcome those who were sorry, strong enough to build a new future, and wise enough to understand that love, even after hurt, is the real way to win. Years passed, and the little village changed in many ways. But one thing stayed the same: the story of Iya Ebele. The house that once belonged only to her family became much more than a home. It grew into a place where hope lived, a place where dreams could grow. On the wall outside the house, a shining plaque was fixed. It read, "Iya Ebele Community Trust, built on silence, strength and truth." This plaque was not just a sign, it was a symbol of everything Iya had done and stood for. People from faraway towns and cities heard about the amazing work happening in the village. They came in buses and cars, curious to see how a girl, once kicked out and left in the rain, had turned pain into power. Visitors walked through the community center, seeing children learning, women sewing, and families growing stronger. They listened to stories about Iya's courage and kindness, stories that inspired everyone who heard them. Many asked Iya how she had managed to build such a strong, loving place from the heartbreak she had faced. How did she go from being rejected by her own family to becoming a hero in her village? Each time someone asked, Iya smiled softly and said, "Because I was never empty. I was just waiting to rise." Those words touched hearts. People saw that Iya was not broken by the storm she faced. Instead, she used that storm to lift herself higher. She never gave up, even when the road was hard and lonely. She stayed quiet and strong, like a seed buried deep in the soil, waiting for the right time to bloom. Aya's story became a light for many who were struggling. It showed them that no matter how dark things seem, no one is truly empty inside. Everyone has a strength waiting to grow, a fire ready to burn bright. Aya's life was proof that even the hardest times can bring the greatest victories if you hold on and believe. The village remembered her not just for what she built, but for how she built it, with patience, love, and truth. The community center wasn't just bricks and wood. It was a home for healing and hope. It was a place where children learned more than reading and writing. They learned about kindness, courage, and forgiveness.